That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. First Man is directed by Damien Chazelle and starring Ryan Gosling, Claire Foy, Jason Clarke, Kyle Chandler, Pablo Schreiber, Christopher Abbott, and Corey Stoll. As usual, there will not be any plot spoilers in this review, but chances are you already know the end of this movie. This film chronicles the life of Neil Armstrong, who was the first man to land on the moon, and it specifically chronicles the years of 1961 up until him officially landing on the moon in 1969, and it goes through all of the personal battles he has to go through, his relationship with his wife, portrayed by Claire Foy, as well as all of the developments within the NASA space program that was going on at the time, and of course, the space race, which was a very important aspect of the 1960s. This is Damien Chazelle's follow-up to La La Land, which came out a couple of years ago. That film was more of a romance, drama, musical, won all kinds of awards, had all kinds of critical acclaim, and this film is very different than that. But what has stayed the same between that film and this film is the quality is still fantastic, and the ability of Damien Chazelle as a director is still fantastic. He is able to kind of jump out of his comfort zone with Whiplash and La La Land, dealing with music, a background, and a theme, and certain things that he knows very, very well, and moving into a more of a biopic, drama, historical type film. This film is absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. There are, of course, some negatives I have within it, but I'll get into those later. First, let's start off with the direction. Like I said, Damien Chazelle is fantastic. The cinematography in this film is great. The editing in this film, I thought, had to be really good. It had to be really good because this is a film that, like I said, chronicles 1961 all the way to 1969. So you needed the film to have a sense of cohesion. You needed the film to have a through line throughout it in order to connect all of it, or else the film will just feel like a series of short films or vignettes, or feel more anthological than I think it was supposed to be, and it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like a journey, and the journey is centered around the character, or the person, of Neil Armstrong, portrayed by Ryan Gosling, who does, once again, in my opinion, an astonishing job as an actor. He portrays Neil Armstrong in a way that is very stoic and very reserved, and he keeps a lot of his emotion within himself, and the parts where he does let out his emotion is when he is in private. He doesn't really do it around other people. He doesn't really talk about a lot of personal things with other people, and not even with his wife, who is portrayed by Claire Foy, who's also really good in this film. Ryan Gosling is one of those actors who is able to convey a lot with just a look or a stare, or with his eyes, or with his body language, and he does that throughout this film. And Claire Foy, who is very much kind of his foil in a way, she is rather emotional in this film, and she confronts him at times of his lack of emotion, or his lack of attentiveness to certain things, particularly his children, because the job he is doing is very dangerous. The space program in the 1960s is a very experimental time. There are a lot of variables and a lot of different things they are just trying out to see if they work, and all of that experimentation can lead literally to people dying, and it did. The ultimate goal was to get to the moon, and I really like how the film chronicles that. It's not at the forefront of this film. This is not a documentary. It's not a film that is about the space program, about NASA in the 1960s and their journey to the moon. It is a film that is very much centered on the person of Neil Armstrong. So don't go into it expecting to get a lot of educational information about space or the space program, because you will not be getting a lot of that. It is nice to go into this film with an interest in the space program, with perhaps some background in studying it yourself. That could definitely help, because you will see a lot of the references, you will see a lot of the people that are in the film. And there are a lot of people that come in and out of this film, and they're portrayed by pretty recognizable actors in Kyle Chandler, in Jason Clarke, in Corey Stoll. The film doesn't really focus on them quite as much, or even really at all, which could be a negative to some, but yet again, the film is titled First Man after all. I think the cinematography in this film is quite astonishing. The film is portrayed with kind of this soft filter that really makes you feel as if it is part of the time. And the film also utilizes a lot of close-ups and POV in certain sequences, specific sequences when Neil Armstrong is in a capsule, or when he is about to be shot off into space, or when he's experimenting on certain crafts or things like that. You get a lot of sense of anxiety and tension and danger that went into all of those things, and the film very much plays for that to the nth degree with its sound. The sound design, the sound editing is fantastic. The shot at the end of the film when they finally get to the moon, you know they're getting to the moon, it's not a big spoiler, is just gorgeous to me. There is just so much beauty in space that is portrayed towards the end of the movie that I think is astonishing. This film also has a great musical score that I think is going to be nominated for an Oscar. Now, when it comes to the negative aspects I have with this film, there are a couple. First, like I mentioned, I think Claire Foy is fantastic within the movie when she's able to just fully flex her acting muscles and be able to do something within the plot. I found that the film needed to utilize her even more, especially establishing her relationship with Neil Armstrong. Although there are elements within the film that definitely strengthen their relationship, I just want to see a lot more of it because the film takes place over a significant amount of time. I want to see that be more consistent. Also, when you have a main character who doesn't have a lot of emotion and who is very reserved, it's very difficult as a viewer to connect yourself with him, to root for him, to really attach yourself to him in any significant way. So you can feel a little detached from this film from that perspective. I really didn't, because I found myself being just so involved with the story of this movie. Also, for some people, the film can be very slow. This is a slow, dramatic film that I think is very deliberate because we are going through a significant amount of time. We need to be given a certain amount of time in each time period that the film goes through in order to really have a more complete picture of what the film is saying in its entirety. For me, it really didn't feel slow at all. So with all that being said, I'm going to give this film a 4.35 out of 5 stars. The acting is great, the direction is great, the cinematography is great, the musical score is gorgeous, the sequences of spaceflight and all of those things are just incredibly anxiety-inducing. It may feel a little long at times for some, and if you're not really into the whole space program or the space race from the 1960s, you may not be as attached to the material as some may be. So that has been my review of First Man. If you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.